Hey there, sinners. It's Adam Knox. Welcome to another episode, and one of the things that we get to explore is change, I suppose. This is not a change in my location. I'm coming from you from one of my other studio spaces. But change is a consistent factor inside of our development. As I'm changing things up in my different studio spaces, our planets are always changing up, and so are the situations that we have to be prepared for. Energies, life is, for many people, very unpredictable. But I have a good friend of mine that knows a little bit about some of that predictions, or at least the direction that some influences are going to come and take. So today, let's sit back and listen to that brilliant mind, Mr. Bill Duvendack, in today's episode of The Astrologer, and let's find out what is going to happen for the month of October. I'll see you on the other side.
Hi everyone, Bill Duvendack here with the preview video for October 2021. It's going to be a very active month. It's going to be one that is based on resolving things and addressing things that have come up recently. So get ready to kind of put the finishing touches on things as we start to move to the end of the calendar year. So let's start off with the fact that Mercury retrograded maybe about a week ago. So I'm sure that's setting the stage for where you're at now. This Mercury retrograde is Mercury in Libra. Mercury is the planet of air. Libra is an air sign. So a lot of what you're going to be dealing with is psychological in nature. Now, Libra is also the sign of personal relationships, whether they are one-on-one professional relationships or whether they are of a romantic nature. So watch for all of those things to come to the surface and be addressed. If the Mercury retrograde was not enough for you, then there's the fact that the month begins with a Sun-Mars conjunction in Libra. Think of Mars as the fire. So when Mars comes along, it says, we're going to make things happen. Mars is a very proactive fire sign. So what this means is that if your Mercury retrograde has been quiet until now, it's going to get a kick in the pants as we start off October. This also means things are going to be very dynamic, so you won't have to look too hard in your life to see where a lot of these might come from. It's going to be very pronounced. It's going to be very in your face. Now, October also starts off with a waning moon period, so that emphasizes the fact that it's time to get out with the old and in with the new. Besides that, we have 8 planets retrograde. 8. 8 little chart points retrograde. Most of these are outer planets, which means they have to do with society. And the Hermetic axiom of as above, so below should be kept in mind here, because retrograde means it's time for us to change our internal dialogue. It's time for us to change our inner perspectives on things. It's time for us to change how we behave and why. So when you put this in context of the Sun-Mars conjunction in Libra, what it's saying is these situations that come up to be addressed with, the answer isn't necessarily getting rid of those situations. The answer is more in shifting our attitudes and shifting our perspectives on those things to look for new insights and look for new ways of handling it. Now, this Sun-Mars conjunction is sextiling the moon in Leo, which is opposing Chiron retrograde in Aries. I know it sounds technical, but here's what's up. With that Sun-Mars conjunction in Libra sextiling the moon in Leo, It means there's going to be a certain sense of optimism in the air. There's going to be a certain sense of creative problem solving in the air. The Chiron retrograde in Aries means that it's time to be our own healers. It's time for us to be our own doctors. And when we diagnose something within us, it's time to make changes based on that. So what you're going to find is either your wounds get triggered through personal relationships, or perhaps if you're involved in a legal situation that's going on, it's really going to hit you right in the heart or right in the gut. So be ready for emotional wounds to be triggered. And these emotional wounds will be a wounded sense of self or a wounded sense of being. Now, that waning period stays until the 6th. And during that time, for a few days, we have the moon opposing Saturn. The moon is in Leo, Saturn is in Aquarius. Leo is the sign of the individual and the self and the strong, healthy ego, whereas Saturn in Aquarius is telling us that society is changing, society is maturing, society is growing. I know we've all got opinions. I know we all have perspectives and thoughts on things. But an easy way to understand this is we look at the sheer numbers game. Jim Morrison from The Doors is right. They got the numbers. Nobody is an island. So as society changes around us, it is wise for us to adapt and go with it. That does not mean blindly following it, but rather seeing where the general tide is turning and what direction everything is flowing and going with it, but still taking our opportunities to have our say, still taking our opportunities to get our 2 cents in, still taking or making our opportunities to say, I'm fine with society going this way, but if we're going to go this way, then we need to apply a little bit of thought here. We need to think things through before everything goes off the rails. So you can see where the as above, so below is. The as above being society, the so below being our individual self. All of this is going to continue until approximately October 6th when we've got the new moon. And in addition to the new moon on the 6th, we also have Pluto directing. Whenever you have that, watch out for short tempers. Watch out for volcanic emotional explosions. Watch out for potential for accidents. If you're hurrying through things or if you're emotionally out of sorts, you're more prone to accidents. And on a social level, watch out for violence. You may be handling things just fine, but if you're dealing with someone who's really showing you a lot of attitude, that's a red flag to you. Something's going on with them that you don't know about. Therefore, it's wise to exercise compassion and understanding. Cool heads prevailing is a good theme of this new moon. Now, this Mercury retrograde in Libra is squaring the Pluto in Capricorn. Squares represent agitation. So what this means is that this Mercury retrograde is really going to shake things up. And it's not only going to shake things up for us internally, like I talked about, it's also going to shake things up from the perspective of how do we change to align ourselves with divine order? How do we change to say, okay, we recognize where things are going, and now it's time to just go with it, getting our shots in where we can. So yeah, it's not going to be a quiet retrograde, as I'm sure you've already seen, and this is going to continue until later in the month when Mercury directs, which is about the middle of the month or so, right around the 18th or thereabouts. There's always a little bit of wiggle room there with astrological planets making turns then and things like that. Now, we also have Venus in Scorpio squaring Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. Traditional astrology says Venus is not in a happy place when it's in Scorpio because it's not allowed to be its expressive self. But really, it's more like Scorpio is the drive and the intensity and the passion and the focus. Venus is the love of that. But when it is squaring Jupiter in Aquarius, part of the message here is simply that maybe you're too focused. Maybe you have too many blinders on. Maybe your intensity will lead you to a personal victory, but at what cost? What will you have to be victorious over? Oftentimes in literature and in higher advanced thought, this is known as a Pyrrhic victory, where you win, but you win at the expense of everything. So all you win is a pile of ashes. That's some of the themes that are going on here. So temper your intensity with context. Temper your drive with the ability to step back and relax. Jupiter is expansive. Aquarius is the energy of the group and society. Society is expanding. We see this every day. More and more details are popping out. More and more situations that have to do with critical thinking are coming up for us to address. And we can either dig in our heels and throw a temper tantrum, or we can resonate with it and go along with it. That's part of a Moon Saturn opposition, doing what emotionally feels good, doing what is mature. And finding the balance there is the wise thing to do for the first half of October. Now, on October 8th, Venus moves out of Sagittarius, or out of Scorpio, into Sagittarius. So we've only got that square for about the first week or so in October. Now, when Venus moves into Sagittarius, that's a good thing. Sagittarius is an optimistic sign. Sagittarius is a sign of freedom and travel and spirituality. So Venus comes along and says, hey, it's time to shift gears from all of that intense energy into the direction of feeling good about things. Remembering that the mind is the ultimate tool. Your perspective helps dictate how things will turn out. Now, this also means if you have strong Sagittarius in your chart, you're probably going to happen into some unexpected blessings. You're probably going to happen into some good things coming your way, whether it's spiritual connection or whether it's a lot of travel. So there's a lot of fun. And that really hits at a good time from mid-October until the end, because it says, hey, all that intensity, all those 8 planets that are retrograde, all of that is now fading. Now it's time to look at the present and look at the future. Saturn directs on October 11th. So remember that Pluto directs on the 6th with the new moon. Then a week later, Saturn directs. What that basically means is that from approximately October 4th until October 12th or October 13th, somewhere in there, that week block is going to see a lot of up and down upheaval. Saturn is the planet of lessons, limitation, karma, foundation, stagnation. Sometimes when Saturn is stationing like this, it feels like you're spinning your wheels getting nowhere, or everything feels heavy and it feels like you're carrying a whole lot of lead. So that week could be very tumultuous, and a lot of that tumult is going to have to do with the changes that we should internally make in order to get a lot of progress and growth when put into context and connection with the world at large. It's a little tricky, isn't it? No one likes to be told, you need to change in this, and I'm not going to tell you. I'm trusting that you're smart enough to look in and say, ooh, I've been handling that wrong. It's time to change. You know, the people that make me nervous are the people that say, I'm who I've been my whole life. And you're talking to them and they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s. You don't want to be that person. Stagnation equals death. We should be growing and changing all the time. And it's when these retrograde periods come up that we receive a lot of messages from the greater world, and we say to ourselves, Okay, that's the message I'm receiving. Whether or not I like it is irrelevant because I'm still getting the message and it's time for me to address it. It's time for me to do something about it. It's time for me to make changes. As Charles Darwin always said, is the most adaptable of the species that survives, but I'll put the caveat on there that sometimes adaptation has its limits. Think of a paper towel under a water faucet. It'll adapt and it'll hold all the water pouring through it. But if that water continues for a long enough period of time, that adaptation turns into disintegration. So, yes, adapt where you can. Yes, adapt where you see that you should. But also remember that at the end of the day, sometimes you can't adapt enough. And knowing our limits is conducive to growth. We also have Jupiter directing on October 18th. So it's a week after Saturn. So it's a week after Pluto. So you see how that 2 to 2.5 week block is going to be very, very active and very, very intense. And when Jupiter directs, that's also about the time that Mercury directs. So watch your travel, watch your spending, watch your words. Practice a little bit of a thick skin so that you don't get triggered by somebody who's having a bad day and they don't realize they're taking it out on you, or they do realize they're taking it out on you. Cool heads should prevail. Now, the full moon is on the 20th, and that's a real good time to plan to do your personal rituals, however you define them, in the name of moving forward. That's a real good time to say, I know who I was before this intense retrograde period. This is who I am now. This is where I'm going and who I will be in the future. So that full moon on the 20th, which is right around the time that the sun is getting ready to change signs, that full moon on the 20th is a great time to make your declaration of self to the universe. That full moon is a time to say, I've learned my lessons. I'm going to apply what I know going forward. 3 days later, on the 23rd, the sun enters Scorpio. So that time period from about the 19th through the 24th or so, there might be a lot of intensity, a lot of shakeup, a lot of things happening. Be ready for that. And you notice how I've said that like 3 or 4 times now? That period might be a time of shakeup. Welcome to your October. Basically, from about October 4th until about October 24th or 25th or so is going to be a time of an up and down roller coaster, thanks to Saturn, thanks to Pluto, thanks to Jupiter, thanks to Mercury, all retrograding and then directing. That's why I said this could be an up and down tumultuous month. In some ways, it will be quieter than months that we've had earlier this year, because a lot of this is internal focused rather than external. But in a lot of ways, it's going to be the same. So get ready to dance with that. Now, on Halloween, Mars enters into Scorpio. So for those of you that have Halloween plans, allow extra time for what you need to get done and for what you want to get done. Also, allow a little extra time for travel. Whenever Mars changes signs, the potential is there for accidents or short tempers. So you see how closely Mars is related to Pluto. The only difference is Mars is a faster moving planet, so the energy of aggression and being proactive is a little bit more pronounced. It's a little more forceful. So think of Pluto like the slow burn, and Mars is the flash fire. Those two planets are going to make major waves during October. What's also interesting is that on October 31st, when Mars enters into Scorpio, the sun will also be in Scorpio. So what this means is extra emphasis on Scorpio. Mars is one of the ruling planets of Scorpio, along with Pluto. So you see how all of this tumult through October, it will quiet down by about the 1st or 2nd in November, but then we move into a November of intensity. Mars in Scorpio is kind of a double-edged sword because on one hand, it's in a strong place and it's in a good placement when it's in a sign it rules, but sometimes it's too much of a good thing. Sometimes Mars in Scorpio is too much drive, too much passion, too much focus. So, as I discussed earlier with the Pyrrhic victory. So, if you're not careful, the stage is set for November to be a month of excess. But unfortunately, for you hedonists out there, it's a negative kind of excess, not a positive. There is something to be said for excess consciousness, the expansion of consciousness. But you got to be careful because some things you don't want excess on because it causes problems. I hope all this makes sense. You can see how it's going to be an up and down month, but when we're done with it, pretty much half those planets are going to be direct. So there's going to be much less emphasis on changing the inner self to harmonize with the outside world. And that's a great vibe to have going into this holiday season. It's kind of like approximately November 3rd or 4th or so, you can look back at the year and say, well, that was an adventure. And then you'll get November and December to kind of breathe deep, quiet down. There's some other major astrological things that are going to occur that we'll talk about in next month's video. But you will get a chance to catch your breath. So the up and down nature of October changes into one of drive and focus for November, but that drive and focus should be tempered with stepping back, relaxing, breathing deep, and saying, okay, I've done all I can on this for today. Now I'm going to kick back from the table. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to chill for a bit. You know, that's a lesson I learned as an entrepreneur is you are your own taskmaster. When you work for yourself, there's no one saying, here's the schedule. There's no one saying, hold your feet to the fire. You have to do it for yourself. So in that way, words of wisdom from Liber Alvel Legis, the book of the law, really come to mind here. Run it business-like. And that's really a good idea to have for November. Run your life like it's a business. That does not mean cutting out the emotions. That simply means be disciplined, be calculating in your responses to things, make opportunities happen if they're not present. If they are present, then maximize your gain with them. But before we get to that plateau in early November, we're going to have to go through the ups and downs of October. The good news is most of this is focused on our connection with society. A lot of this is focused on personal to personal relationships. A lot of this is focused on romance. Now, keep in mind that Libra is generally seen as the planet of love and of the planet of romance, or of the sign of romance. Scorpio is generally seen as the sign of sex and passion. I point that out because all the work that you do in October to resolve things and clear out the heart space and clear out the emotions, all of that set the stage for a powerful and intense November. And if these are affairs of the heart, then basically the work you do in October could set the stage for a very passionate and lust-filled November. Now, if that's not your jam, if that's not your thing, then another way to look at it is that all of this resolution that you're doing in October kind of clears things out so that you can hit the ground running in November and pursue what you want to pursue without having to come back and deal with a lot of the stuff because it just got brought up at the end of September with the Mercury retrograde, and then with this up and down period in October, all that stuff gets cleared out. I hope all this makes sense. I don't really want to scare or intimidate anyone with it because the major focus is changing how we view ourselves, changing our attitudes and opinions towards things, changing how we choose to interact in life with others and with social structures, Nobody is an island, so we kind of have to do that if we want to get anywhere in the Western world. But this also means critical thinking, clear thinking, the mind over emotions are all major themes to address during October. It's all about the mind. It's all about deciding how you're going to change when appropriate, and how then you decide to apply it going forward. Now, in the Northern Hemisphere, you would want to change how you apply it going forward, but you wouldn't want to implement it until next March, which is the spring equinox. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, look at all of this divine timing. You have the first half of your spring, which started with the equinox in September. You have the first half of your spring all about dealing with the energetic hangover from the energetic year that just got done. But then you can immediately hit the ground running with new projects. You don't have to wait till March like us suckers in the Northern Hemisphere. And you like that? A little throwback to the 70s there, sucker. Regardless of where you're at on the planet, though, get ready for October. Get ready for the changes. Get ready for the self-reflection. Get ready to see yourself as reflected in the greater society at large. And ask yourself how you're going to change to resonate with it. Ask yourself how you are going to change how you talk to yourself and how you talk to others. Ask yourself how you are going to resolve these situations that come up. To live in denial or turn a blind eye to that is the most toxic, damaging, and detrimental thing you can do. So as these things come up, face them, address them, learn from them, grow from them, implement what you can, and then get ready for a good holiday season. Again, regardless of where you're at on the planet, the calendar year is coming to a close. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you have all the potential here for a clear, fresh start with your spring equinox that just happened in September. So therefore, the holidays are more like a second wind getting ready for the new astrological year. Whereas us in the Northern Hemisphere, it's all about winding down everything. See, you people in the Southern Hemisphere, you already did that. So remember where you're at and how you can put all of these energies to work for you. Anyway, thank you to Adam Knox for this opportunity to share this with the cult of you people and all of you billions out there. If you want more information on handling retrogrades or any of the topics I talked about, check out my website, 418ascendant.com, especially the Shop Here tab at the top that has the digital courses. I pretty much cover all of this there. And of course, daily horoscopes on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, monthly horoscopes all over the place. There's also some video work that will be released in October. They'll further clarify a lot of this stuff. So watch for more information to help you successfully navigate this next season of our lives. To my friends in the Southern Hemisphere, happy spring. To my friends in the Northern Hemisphere, happy autumn. And until we chat again, may we all receive blessings of good health and prosperity and success as we move forward in divine alignment, following the consciousness of our will. Blessings.
I've always felt a little different, a little uneasy between regular folk, a bit of a dreamer, a lost cause, a little non-ordinary, some would say. I think I've always just been this way. My mother said I was special. My father thought I should be feared. But I knew that witchcraft coursed through my veins the first time I tasted the lips of the goddess inside the rain. Yes, I'm a witch, it's true. And sure, we are the ones who believe in the beauty of nature, who believe in the things science, absent of art, cannot explain, who instead of religion would have romance. And sure, you may think we have lost our way, when in the world of predictable things we have such unfamiliar things that we would like to say. But maybe in a world so cold and alone, a little unfamiliar is exactly what is needed. to show us the way home.